Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Thank you for coming. My name is Amy Draves, and I'm pleased to welcome Rajiv Narang to the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. Rajiv is here to discuss his book, well-received book, Orbit Shifting Innovation. If an idea is to be orbit shifting, it must go beyond the boundaries of conventional thinking and be among the most disruptive and revolutionary. The planetary metaphor of gravity and orbits frames the exploration of hidden forces and surprising allies to innovation. He is the founder of the consulting firm Erewhon and is recognized as India's innovation thought leader. He has inspired people and organizations across cultures and across the world to shift their thought orbits. The book, by the way, includes testimonials from actual clients that have tried these techniques. Please join me in giving him a very, very warm welcome.
Well, formally, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure being here, and I'm hoping that over the next hour or so, I'll take you into a hyper-speed walk into what does it take to make an orbit shift happen, and through littered with our experiences and insights over the last 20-odd years. So I was lucky enough to have married passion and profession very early in life, and literally have invested the whole life, and this book is really is nothing but a synthesis of the learnings. So I'm going to share some of those with you very quickly, and of course, I'm sure your questions and challenges may make it that much more enriching. So, for those of you who are curious, I'm sure you have decoded Erewhon by now. Have some of you decoded it, or are there still some questions? Because I do keep this question that does come up occasionally. Erewhon, well, sounds German. Or to some people, it sounds Korean sometimes. The word "won" in the end can be very confusing, but I'm sure some of you have decoded it. Have you?
Yes.
You have. A couple of hands at least. Well, if you read it backwards, you'll find it gives itself away. It's really the word nowhere spelt backwards. And when we were starting out on a journey some 20 years ago, in one word, it spelt out the mission actually. When you look at the word and you split it up, you notice nowhere becomes now here. It's very fascinating. In one word, it spelled the mission, nowhere to now here, impossible to possible, hopelessness to hope. That's essentially the mission of Erewhon. And we were lucky really to have found it right in the beginning. And I'm going to share with you what has been our journey. We work with organizations, obviously. But our work is not limited there. We also work with social enterprises and business and public services. Essentially, wherever a leap is needed is the role of innovation. Now, the challenge is really how to make it happen. So I'm going to share with you the insights which have come to us through these 20 years of trying to find answers to the unanswered questions around innovation. You know, everybody would love to be able to do it, but very few actually manage it. And somehow innovation has also gotten this not so good viewpoint that only 10% innovation succeed. You know, to my mind, I'd like you to junk that right in the beginning. When organizations are in a spray and pray mode, obviously only 10% will succeed. It's fascinating, huh? When you throw 100 ideas, that something will come through. And even 10% is actually lucky then, if it stands that onslaught. So really, what we found where it is done deliberately and by design, why 10%? 70% can succeed. So I'd urge you to junk that right in the beginning, and then let's start exploring what does it take to make it happen. I'll share with some of our learnings and insights. And interestingly enough, all the learnings and insights I'll share with you have drawn from these three roles that we play. The role of a consultant, a facilitator, and a coach. So as a consultant, really the challenge is how do you get an organization to think and act innovatively? But as a facilitator, a huge part of our work has been in facilitating breakthrough journeys from concept up to in-market success. So over 250 over these years. So really having seen through the pains of making it happen, is where a lot of our insights come from. And as a coach, coaching leaders in taking their teams through those leaps. And it's fascinating that the world of consultancy is also split up. Like everything is siloed, even that is siloed. There are strategy consultants, OD, organization development consultants, and leadership consultants. And we find in our world, all three have to combine seamlessly. Because you never know where the real barrier to innovation is. It could be at a strategic blind spot, an organization design error, or it could be simply a leadership mindset. Maybe the fear of one guy is seeming like a strategic issue, whereas it isn't. It could very well just be the fear of one person. And it has to be, therefore, dealt with at an interpersonal level. It can't be dealt with as a strategic issue at all. And so we work in India, Asia Pacific, Europe, also in the US now. So it's a very fascinating cross mix of countries and cultures. And as we very often say, we are not domain experts, we are innovation experts. And magic happens when innovation expertise is combined with domain expertise. But at all points of time, we work with the organization. It's never outside of it. So this is a fascinating mix of sunrise, sunset industries, and literally across domains. And as I mentioned to you, across public services, business, and social enterprises too. First reactions to this map? Quick reactions.
Map of Asia.
If you had it on a piece of paper in front of you, what would have been your first reaction? A lot of people are showing it to me, actually. It's inevitable, isn't it? We are used to seeing the map in one way. Fascinating, the maps were designed to be information, but when you've seen a map for a long period of time, it becomes a mindset. There's really one way of looking at the map. There can't be another. By now, we even have statements built around it. And over the years, it just happened to get drawn this way, right? After all, the world is round. And we found this map in Australia with this bold statement below it. No apologies are called for in presenting the map at the south at the top. After hundreds of years of development, southern lands have no reason to be under the northern hemisphere. A very classic Aussie way of rebelling against life, right? Maybe they don't like being called down under. But really, why am I showing this to you, and what connected with me when I saw it for the first time was that this truly represents the start of an innovation drive or a question, when there's a positive restlessness to questioning the world order and not merely staying with it. Because these world orders can be very implicit, almost invisible sometimes. Some are far more visible. And if you look at it across industries, you will find a very a pattern emerging. One or two market leaders in most sectors, many followers, and sometimes there emerges a challenger. Sometimes. I have my perspective on challengers. I'm sure you have yours. So very quickly, what are the names of organizations that come to your mind? Who would you consider challengers and not followers? Thinking outside of our industry. I'm deliberately taking you outside of our industry. So who would you consider challengers as organizations and not followers?
Elon Musk.
Okay. Any other names?
Can you repeat those?
Who would you consider challengers as organizations?
Can you repeat the answer?
Please.
Elon Musk.
Any other names come to mind? Who else? Across industries, across the world.
Gandhi.
As an individual, yes, I'm more organizations right now.
Elon Musk is an individual.
Well,
Yes. Tesla.
okay. So please, organizations. Which organizations would you consider and not leaders? Don't tell me you can't think of any.
Ryanair.
Ryanair. Actually, the original one was Southwest, right?
Yep.
That's where the whole model really began. Any others?
Uber.
I'll take your word for it right now. Any others? You know, it's fascinating that in this room you must know the names of thousands of organizations that we are not thinking about. It's fascinating, isn't it, how quickly history forgets. And what connects with me very deeply is that challengers create history. The rest follow it. And so really, when you think of who we remember those who created it at some point of time or the other. And I'm just going to quickly share with you the people, some organizations that come to my mind, and just to expand thinking across the world. Because what we also try to do is deliberately work across sectors, across cultures to see, therefore, what are the new reference points. You know, we all know Steve Jobs' image or Bill Gates' image if I showed it to you, but this is another innovator. Any guesses? Tough one. This is also an innovation which had a global impact, but in the world of cataract eye surgery, in the in south of India, in a sleepy town called Madurai, this man took on a mission to eliminate needless blindness. Really, what he found was in a lot of parts of rural India, when people lose their eyesight due to cataract, they actually don't know it's curable. And what's worse, a person at the edge of the poverty line, when he loses his eyesight, he could lose his life. So now his response was not charity, but a business model solution. So the challenge was, how do I make my surgeon, who's the most expensive asset, the most productive? Classical productivity question, which we are all concerned with all the time. He found a breakthrough which made his surgeon 10 times more productive than the global best at the same quality. 10x, it's not merely a 0.1x or a 0.2, 10 times more productive. And they are now the global reference point. It's called Arvind Eye Care. I mean, they are literally mentioned all over the world, and it's fascinating when we talk about them that you don't have to be in Silicon Valley to do great things. You can really be everywhere. The challenge is people somehow start to believe that the place is the reason for their being rather than them. Right? The place is not boring, maybe I am. That's the tougher question usually. And the most amazing thing, he started this mission at the age of 58 after retiring from his previous job. The next 20 years, he's gone and done this. So really, there's hope for everyone in this room. The life is not done. To take you further from India, further into the East, the mobile revolution, which has been a huge part of the emerging economy, is really the core innovation, the product innovation started in the Philippines. The prepaid card with electronic recharging. Now, they came up with that, and then the business model innovation came from a company in India and combined with process. So really all three, product, process and business model innovation together have made this amazing revolution happen. Because ultimately, while the prepaid card was a great idea, but it dropped revenues dramatically. The per person usage rate dropped dramatically. To make that economically viable needed a business model innovation. And when the three have combined, and that's really the heart of it. So really what appears to be amazing is a combination of three innovations. Have you heard of M-Pesa? Some of you must have. This happened in Africa. Vodafone in Africa. They converted the mobile phone into a mobile wallet, into a mobile bank account. And really banked the millions of Kenyans who didn't even have a bank account. Their first bank account was not with a bank, what was with a local retailer with whom some money was deposited, a mobile account opened, and then you could pay with an SMS. Astonishing, isn't it? And today they have 17 million subscribers in Africa. And fascinating. And also Vodafone, which had never even attempted something like this in any of the developed markets. They did it in Africa first. So the cell phone becomes a 24-hour-by-7 teller, literally. Take you even further off into the vast lands of Mongolia, where innovation happens even there. You know, you can imagine in a vast, I'm sure you have images of Mongolia, that vast terrain of land, nearest hospital far away, 35 to 40 kilometers for most people. So access to healthcare, a big challenge. Now, how do you make healthcare accessible was the question. So now the government was struggling with this question, and interestingly enough, when a country is trying to improve access to healthcare, what would be the most traditional solution? What would be the usual advice given to these people? What would it be? What do you need to do?
Build a clinic.
Clinics. So really, clinics, doctors, that's even tougher. The hardware is easier. Software is usually tougher. I mean, especially by way of people. And sending them to rural, even more. So you can imagine what an infrastructure heavy solution that is. A lot of emerging economies, their healthcare infrastructure today is 1/6 that of a developed nation in terms of the number of hospitals, nurses, doctors. Now, however, the fascinating thing is that they reframed the question itself. That rather than invest in supplying healthcare, how about reducing the demand on healthcare? So invest in wellness. Now that's fascinating, isn't it? And they partnered with Nippon Foundation of Japan to put in action a traditional Japanese solution. And what was this solution? To put literally first aid kits into each house. But we are all our first doctors, aren't we? By now you know, right? If this is the problem, do this. Now if that doesn't work, we go to a doctor. So that first instinct is there in all of us. Now riding on that instinct, they actually put into each house, into some districts, a medical kit based on symptoms, that if this is the symptom, this is what you take. But coached in this case. It wasn't instinct anymore. And also all the medication was based on traditional Mongolian medicine, which is herbal, and not Western medicine, which is chemical. So even if they took the wrong one, there's no side effect, since it is herbal. Now these kits were placed in houses. The doctors were made in charge of some of an area. So they would go around, check. And even more fascinating, the payment, the business model was post-paid, not prepaid. It's like a hotel minibar. You pay based upon how much you use. Now when the doctor went around, based upon how much they had used, they would pay. The outcome has been most amazing. In some districts, the number of people coming to hospitals reduced by as much as 60%. Now, what could be a more glorious outcome than that? You know, think about it. This is cost of this solution versus the cost of healthcare infrastructure. What does it take to create this? Are we solving the wrong problem? But that's really what orbit shifting innovation is about, right? About questioning the problem in itself. And how are we attempting it? How are we thinking about it? Sometimes the answer may not lie in modern technology, it may lie in ancient wisdom. In this case it was literally ancient wisdom which came into play. You know, all these examples, some of those that you've shared with me and I've shared with you, are, what stands out about them is that they were literally, they made a quantum leap. It's an orbit shift as we call it. And, you know, on the other hand, you notice a lot of organizations that you haven't thought about, traditionalists get stuck in an orbit. It happens to the best of us. You know, no matter how good a team you put together, it's so easy to get stuck into a formula, which we all know, which is predictable. It's, while we all would love to be orbit shifters, but the reality is most of us get stuck into maintaining the orbit. And the biggest challenge I'm sure that you all recognize is, for any organization of the kind that we are in a part of, shifting the orbit and maintaining it at the same time is by far the toughest question. And I'm sure you live it every day, that dilemma and that challenge. And really, today, I'm sure you've experienced it, but today I find that no CEO be dare caught not talking innovation. You cannot not talk it, but only just less than 5% actually manage to do it. Where is this gap really? However, it's not a question of malintent, not at all. They genuinely want it. So really, where is so what drags down? I'm just sticking with the physics metaphor. It also happens to all of us individually too. When students are leaving a college, you know, when about to leave college, step out into life and you meet these people and ask them, what do you want to do? You'll hear a lot of them talk big stuff, wouldn't you? I want to change the world. And you meet these same people 10 years later, what has usually happened? What has happened more often than not?
Maturity.
The world changed them.
Unfortunately, more often than not, the world has changed them. They have become hopelessly practical by now. And the dreams are not dead, but dormant. Actually, what I've shared with you are some examples of where people reclaimed those dreams. However, what really happens? What is that happened over 10 years is really what we call gravity. Gravity catches up, and you throw it up, and no matter how hard you throw it up, it comes down. You know, any community, any organization, it gathers gravity over a period, no matter what. And that gravity has this power to block change, to prevent it. And there was a very interesting study conducted across organizations once as to how do people, a majority of the people react to these amazing vision and mission statements that come out, and these slogans which come out in organizations. What do you think most people, what is their reaction? The large masses. You know, it's, in one word, the reaction of the masses usually is, this too shall pass. These guys must have come from an offsite somewhere, and their grand slogan, just wait it out long enough and it will go away. Life will continue to be what it is, as comfortable as it always was. Trouble is, more often than not, it's right. They've learnt the fine art of survival by now. Do nothing, and hopefully it will go away. But that is gravity. You notice the inertia which comes with gravity? That's the heart of it. And gravity in itself, it gathers over time. And so when we talk thinking out of the box, I'd like you to think about that carefully, because we've explored this beautiful word that is used so easily and thrown around. The challenge is which box? And the boxes are not visible. That is the bigger question. At one level, you have organization gravity. An organization gathers a way of working, conditioning, but over a period, an industry develops gravity. It's not just one organization. The whole industry. One most interesting story around this, which brings this alive beautifully, is really one of Walt Disney's earlier experiences. You know, one of the first films, animation that they tried out was of Three Little Pigs. Some of you must have seen it. It was very successful. So when Walt Disney came back and he was talking to his studio and asked them, so what film shall we make next? What do you think was the response? What would happen when one genre of film begins to succeed?
Do the same thing over and over.
Well, you know, pigs work. Pigs sell. Pigs too. Now that was the very natural response, and the good people don't for a minute doubt their capacity or capability. But that's what conditioning does. You know, when Walt Disney thought about it a lot and he came back and he was saying, you know, it struck me now, you can't beat pigs with pigs. You have to do something else. That is when they went on to make Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you know film history, it was perhaps the first full-length feature film in animation. It started virtually this category of feature films, animated feature films. It took a Snow White to beat pigs. Over a period, what happens to any industry? You notice, over a period, everything starts to look the same across an industry. Everybody is making pigs. In fact, the whole industry becomes a massive pig-making factory. And people will tell you, well, I have a blue pig. I have a slimmer pig. I have a faster pig. I have a cheaper pig. But it's a pig nevertheless. There's no Snow White on the agenda even by now. And of course, we then say this is commoditized, this industry. Completely commoditized. You can't do anything here but reduce price. Very naturally, right? When everybody is doing the same thing. I'd like you to just think about this question. Banks, the idea of a mutual fund did not come from a bank. Over 75 years, across the world, the same blind spot. And what was the blind spot? That they thought of their customers as people who save and don't invest. Now think about this. Very well cultivated businesses. And you can't fault a bank with hiring talent. They hire the best talent money can buy and give them the fanciest designations. I'm sure you know that. They are masters of this art. But that hardly has insured them against conditioning. 75 years around the world, the same blind spot. In fact, 3 of the biggest game changers in banking have not come from a bank. This one, microfinance, did not come from a bank. Mobile banking also didn't. What M-Pesa came through didn't come from a bank either. In fact, they really resisted it in Kenya. They were feeling as if their domain was getting upset. Who are these guys, Vodafone, to do banking? It doesn't even sound like reasonable. However, these are... Do you think this idea would have emerged internally and would have been dismissed? Very likely. In fact, some new guy must have said, why not try this? And if a new guy says this, what is he likely to be told?
You have no idea what you're talking
Yeah. How long have you been here? 2 months? Come on, after you've been here 2 years, then I'll ask you. I mean, after 2 years, you won't ask these silly questions, right? You know what conditioning teaches people is the questions not to ask here. The best conditioning is really about that. The fine art of survival is what not to ask. It's not about what to raise. But this is implicit in folklore. Industry gravity, even deeper. The deeper boxes are country and cultural gravity. I'd like you to think about this. These are even deeper. Up to industry, we all think about. These are actually even deeper. And when you dig it deeper, and these boundaries really come alive when you see different levels of markets meeting. Say a company from a developed industry trying to enter an emerging market, these boundaries really come alive there. UPS, uninterrupted power supply, companies, multinationals entered emerging markets. Now the UPS industry had a legacy of their own in their minds. UPS was associated with the computer, right? So that's how it had worked in developed markets. So when they entered emerging markets, they extended their thinking. You attack a new market with the old market's mindset. That happens to the best of us. In this case, they did it. So what is the size of the market? Equal to the computer penetration. How do you penetrate this market? Through electronic stores, extension of the paradigm. And what they missed actually was the biggest opportunity possible. The biggest opportunity in emerging markets was the home inverter. Because power supply in itself gets this disrupted. People need it for their livelihood, day to day. And they completely missed that. It was just simply a blind spot for 4 years. And till the local entrepreneurs did a big thing there, and actually they reversed it. From creating inverters for the house, they also enabled them to use it for the laptops too. You can imagine what happened then. However, capability was there. The opportunity was missed. It was not an issue of capability. They could have dealt with it if they knew it, but the trouble was the capacity to see it. And attempting a next market with the old market's mindset, and the biggest, so this is one level. What happened to developed markets is companies which are doing brilliantly in one market is they try and replicate it. I have heard this very frequently, and when that replication does not succeed in an emerging market, the reaction is, this market is not ready yet. Have you heard that one? What could be a more imperialistic statement than that? Now think about it, the markets are ready, but for something else. The markets are always ready for something else. The trouble is they are not ready for what we want to give them. And if only we were to just step back a little and see what they are ready for, there is so much opportunity waiting out there. It's so fascinating how frequently this happens. The market is not ready yet. And on the other hand, the finest example of this arrogance really is also French wines. Lost market share for 30 years running. And it's so difficult to change because the French just don't drink any other wine. They don't believe anybody else can do it better. By the way, all the French wines are labeled in French because you're not supposed to understand it. It's French, it must be good. It's so amazing. That's the degree of it, the height to which it is taken. But 30 years they were the market leaders. Challengers erupted all around them. Californian wines, New Zealand wines, South African wines, you name it. And those challengers and the French market share has dropped amazingly. Very, very sad. However, it took them 30 years to even start changing their business model. 30 years since. There's a very interesting story which we'll talk about some other time called the Paris Judgment Day, when French food chefs compared French wines with Californian wines and Californian wines scored on a blind test. You think the French believed it? No way. This was in 1975. And it's 30 years later, the same test, the same results. But very difficult. You notice, arrogance reaches the point where you deny reality even. It is not easy. It's very painful actually. The other side, in emerging markets, we have a different kind of a country and cultural gravity. Subservience. It takes a different form altogether. The belief that how could we have been the first ones to have come up with it? In fact, the belief in a lot of these economies, when they get a big idea, come on, how could we have been the first ones to have gotten it? I mean, if we've got, those guys must have actually thought of it long time ago and not done it. It can't be that we've come up with it. In fact, one organization which was into watches, their R&D team was thrown this challenge to create the slimmest water-resistant watch in the world. Slimmest and water-resistant. Now, this was in India. Can you imagine what the reaction of this team was to this challenge? Have the Swiss done it? Now, the Swiss are the gods of precision engineering, right? And the Swiss had not done it and believed it could not be done. You can imagine what their reaction was. My God, the Swiss say it can't be done, it can't be done. Right? Now, that's gravity. But fortunately, they got through this gravity in their mind and said, if the Swiss can't do it, we will. It took them 6 years and they did. The same team did it. But that was the box. You don't need the enemy outside, the enemy inside is far bigger. So it's not industry, it's country and culture gravity now playing up, which makes people do reverse engineering rather than innovation. I'm sure you've seen reverse engineering, right? Pick up something, modify it a little and call it ours. Rather than believe that we can lead with it. But when this breakthrough happens at that point, that unleashes the new thought. So no matter how much ideation you teach these people, it'll get used to create even more reverse engineering faster. I hope you connect with me that if the barrier is there, it doesn't matter how many ideation techniques they learn. Because ideation will be used to do reverse engineering faster and better, rather than go to the heart of it, as to where is the real boundary. And if you notice, all this that I've been sharing with you is gravity. Where does it stem from? Just to unscramble it a little in our minds. Ideas emerge from frames. The challenge is, how do we do it now? How do we break through it, right? As people, one thing is to know, but how do you do it? Ideas in our minds emerge from frames. Imagine frames are like windows to your mind. When you're attacking a question or a problem, you open a window and it reveals some ideas. When we run out of ideas, the answers are not finished. The frame is saturated. Shift the frame and a new burst of thinking will start. But frames are like windows. Even deeper is the mental model, the mindset that we've been talking about. That's like the lens. It doesn't matter what window you open, the lens doesn't change. The lens is me, is even deeper. That's actually the premise, literally, that you start thinking with. And that's the most invisible as you go deeper. So this gravity is the form of entrenched mental models, and really all our work is about how do you recognize them and then start breaking through those. Even recognizing them can be a challenge. This is a big myth around the innovation world. Create a structure and a process and innovation will happen, right? So we create a department around innovation and create a stage gate process and hope innovation will happen. I've never seen a breakthrough come through a process like that. I don't know if you have. You know what are we trying to do? We are trying to use a standard principle, that's how we handled quality. So we created a department around quality and it was done, but that was all right because it was maintaining the orbit. But orbit shifting is like creating another department. The most helpless people I've seen are chief innovation officers. I mean, what do they actually do? So they end up creating this central idea management system and hope something will happen. How will something happen? It is not on the leadership agenda at all. Is it and I do keep, let's start with this thought. Orbit shifting is the purpose, innovation is the means. Managing innovation will not let innovation happen. If there is no appetite for it, appetite comes from orbit shifting. You want to transform something and not merely improve it now, doing more of the same, can't do it. Now there is a need for innovation. Innovation can't be managed, it has to be unleashed. Our learning over these years is if orbit shifting is the purpose, innovation will be deployed, it will happen. But if the purpose is merely to maintain the orbit, then all the discussion around innovation will in any case end up nowhere. There's no need for it actually. Nobody actually wants it. It's just a nice thing to talk about. And this is another myth. So you have to hire cowboys from somewhere. And the hope is again something will happen. But the cowboys will become part of the gravity in no time. The gravity is far bigger than individuals. I mean, the expectation to have 4 guys will change something, that's only be temporary at best. Unless we, so really the start point is not about structures, processes or hiring new people, but breaking through that mindset gravity at the core. And when that unleashes, we've seen the same people do it. It does not take a change of teams. In fact, more often than not in our experiences, it did not take a change of teams. The same guys did the impossible. Once the mindset gravity was unleashed. So the other myth is this one, right? It starts with an out-of-the-box idea. I'm sure you've seen this romance discussed a lot. Some guy under a shower got this great idea. All these stories are very romantic in hindsight. The trouble is but these are accidents usually. You can't wait and hope for accident. As an organization, you have to design for it. Our learning really is that not with an out-of-the-box idea, but with an out-of-the-box challenge is where it starts. Deliberate out-of-the-box challenge, which cannot be done doing more of the same. To give you a very interesting example of this, Korea, SK Telecom, into mobiles. For 3G was being introduced there as a network. Now, they took on an out-of-the-box challenge, which was monetize the non-monetized part of the network. It was not grow our business by 20%. The moment you do that, people do more of the same, even better. But this was an out-of-the-box. Monetize the non-monetized part of the network, and it's very interesting. The moment they said that, one of their partners was looking at this and recognized that the ringtone is not monetized. That actually when you call me and my phone rings 10 times and I don't pick up my phone, I don't respond, you've actually used my network and not paid me for it. How about monetizing that? That led to ringtones and all the missed call services, which erupted from there. But where did it start? Out-of-the-box idea didn't come first. The challenge came first. Starting with an out-of-the-box challenge leads to an out-of-the-box idea and not the other way around. And I'm mentioning that when it is done by design and deliberately, when you want to really provoke thinking to another level. And to give you another example, one company in Europe, Ala Foods, was into dairy products. They wanted to create a big leap. And they also started an out-of-the-box challenge, space food for dairy products. I mean, imagine, they took on the challenge of space foods. The business guy said, well, how many clients do you have? 2. But the question was, when you take your mind there, we'll create breakthroughs which can then be commercialized. So they actually did send it up with NASA. And it got commercialized in various formats. But it started there. But the crux is all this talk you might be saying, Rajiv, is very fanciful, but who will actually do it? I mean, in business, in organizations, who are the heroes? Heroes are people who are great at under-promising and overachieving. Right? Most organizations build this culture very beautifully. So at the beginning of the year, when planning is happened for next year, who are the heroes? The guys who know how to promise just get a goal which is just below what they can achieve. That's supposed to be the hallmark of negotiation skills. Where is the question of an out-of-the-box challenge? I mean, people have to be nuts to be taking that on and calling their KPI. Absolutely not. Now think about it. There's no question. So really, the biggest barrier is not the fear of, this is a myth that it's a fear of commercial risk. The bigger barrier is the fear of personal risk. Who will put his credibility on the line for an out-of-the-box challenge? And how do we cultivate a performance system which distinguishes the two? So managers, leaders don't manage an innovation the way they manage performance. Now, that's the trouble with this world also, right? That we try and manage innovation the way we manage performance. The reviews, the metrics are not very different. The way of engaging is absolutely similar. For us, the crucial difference has been an orbit shifting challenge is not a number to be achieved, it's a direction, not a destination. In the chase of it, we'll end up miles beyond where we are today, even if we never get there. It doesn't matter if we don't get there. Because in the chase of it, we'll in any case have gone miles beyond where we are today. What's more important, transforming the status quo or achieving some numbers for the sake of them? Because in any case, the organization movement is far more than where would I be otherwise. A lot of the examples I've shared with you, those people never actually achieved those numbers. But in the chase of it, they shifted the industry reference points forever. So this is about how does one, so innovation needs ideation is the other myth. Not really. I'd urge you to, if there's one thing I'd like you to keep in your mind at the end of the day is, when you set on a big innovation journey, the start point is not brainstorming and generating ideas. If you want a breakthrough, the start point is mapping the mental models of the current way of thinking in that place. In fact, when we start on any of our missions, the first point is map mental model boundaries. That's it. Believe me, seeing those mental models will make us see the blind spots in no time. It will stop this urge of rushing into ideation. Take on a big challenge, just map boundaries, and it's how many blind spots will come through. And each blind spot is an opportunity. That the team will see in no time.
Can you explain a little bit what this means?
Yeah, I will. I will. In fact, I'm just coming to that to illustrate that for you. So just to give you an example, we started out with Unilever some years ago. Their challenge was create the next game changer in laundry, for example. Now, they say, around the world, actually, we've done lots of ideation. We have more than 4,000 ideas. I doubt if there could be anything new, but let's try. So what we said, well, why don't you share your ideas with us? And we mapped them. Essentially, what we started to see was, those ideas, what are the underlying frames and what are the underlying mental models? Once the mental model started to emerge, the blind spots are very visible. Think about it. Laundry equals removing. Right? In your mind, laundry as a process equals really moving the bad away. So all of the ideas, most of the ideas were how to remove faster, better, with less water, more efficient, etc., etc. But the fascinating thing was, the mental model boundary was remove, but that is post-dirt, right? The moment you say post-dirt, immediately you think of an alternative, isn't it? How about pre-dirt? How about preventing dirt? How about living with it? And making the process of removal a lot more infrequent. Now, those questions started coming up when we started questioning once they started questioning the mental model. We didn't have to do it. Once they see the mental model, the blind spots are very visible, but that was one. The other thing was it's about removing. What about adding? Now you might say, but we don't want to add dirt for sure. Of course not. But those are the points where unusual things begin to happen. And the question really was about adding. What about adding health? But that's not laundry. Think about that. But that's not laundry, right? That's the immediate reaction. The trouble is that metaphor of laundry is a mental model by now. It is stuck. So what are the mental models? I'll give you a couple of more examples around this. To get to the underlying why, how, and what mental models. There are mental models surrounding the why, the what, and the how at all points of time, which are invisible usually. In the water industry, the first one was, you notice the whole industry here had gotten trapped into a process, a sequence. First, so purification is about what? Filter at the source, then package, then drink. So filter at the source, where the water comes into a house, it has to be filtered at that point, then packaged, then drunk. Now the whole industry is busy in the same mental model. So therefore everybody is making it faster, better, cheaper, with more features. You notice now what's happened. The mental model is stuck. Till one company in Switzerland, they challenged it very beautifully. Why purify at the source? How about purifying it as you drink? So the life straw. You can drink from anywhere and it purifies it. You notice there are photographs of people drinking from a lake there. It costs a fraction and can do about 1,000 liters in a year. Can you imagine how many lives this will save? Or people who could never possibly have afforded that, and also how liberating it can be. And this company is not even into water purification, they were into fabric. So really, it didn't take a new technology. It took the application of existing technologies in new ways. That's another myth. That the next big technology will make the big leap happen. I'd urge you to think that's an escape route. The new ways of using existing, even older technologies have so much power waiting there for them. It's really not that the next big leap will come from the next big technology. New applications of existing technologies and combinations will create leaps, creative combinations, as they did in this case. So this is now let's talk about the why, right? People into diabetes. All these companies into diabetes, over a period of time found that one company was questioning, what are we? We are pill pushers? We're just selling pills? How about helping the patient manage his disease? I mean, when diabetes happens to you, it starts ruling your life. So reframe it. How about helping him manage that disease? And that led to the Novo pen. A pen-like device with one click which can deliver a dosage. Now, for people who get to a high level of diabetes, social life becomes tough, becomes embarrassing. Life's rhythms get disrupted. And so something which can be carried almost like a lifestyle statement, open it and with one click delivers. What happened was people for the first time felt that now I control diabetes, doesn't control me. But can you imagine this organization breaking through this boundary, because all their life they are thinking R&D is about the next drug. It's not about a drug delivery device. That was actually, they thought it was some marketing gimmick. They didn't even patent it. However, this has been a game changer in that world. But what is the mental model boundary, the why? What are we into? And is there a completely different way of thinking? The low-cost airlines also started like this. What is the purpose of the airline? Is it comfort or is it getting from point to point at the lowest cost? You notice somebody questioned it fundamentally. Because over a period of time, everybody is adding value without asking value for what. People become great at adding value and over-engineering anything. Anything gets over-engineered out of shape over a period. Because everybody's contribution is a value add and not a transform. So what I've tried to illustrate to you is what does it take to make this happen. I'm just going to jump a few slides because we have a time issue to deal with. The other is innovation equals insulated invention. Getting the blind spot was the mental model boundary, but if you want to do it deliberately, it's not sitting in a room and generating ideas and experimenting. Challenge is to join dots across domains and across industries. In fact, to do it deliberately. That we found always works. It opens up, searching for the mental model boundary is a search for the next question. It's not the search for the answer. For the new question. You find the new question, we'll find the answer. The trouble is finding the question in itself. So it's not really the search for ideas, but the search for new questions. Then how do you do that? By joining new dots deliberately. In fact, what we get teams to look at is for any business they are in is most fascinating. There are 6 horizons to join dots with. First, look at the edgy customers in our field. Not the usual ones, the edgy ones. And what can we learn from them? The Novo pen idea came from there, incidentally, that insight. One girl, one of their customers they found had done something very unusual. She'd actually developed a syringe, gotten a local clinic to develop it, and pre-package it for the day. So, well, that's interesting. How can we develop it into a product now? A pen-shaped thing which is pre-loaded for the day, or for a week actually. But where did it start from? One edgy customer, that one edgy insight. And so the challenge is not the usual. Those edgy customers will challenge the mental model boundaries. The boundaries will get challenged when you engage with them. But searching for them, engaging with them is one horizon. Second, not just edgy customers, ecosystem. We were working with a team which was creating a breakthrough in security, data security. So they met edgy customers first. Then ecosystem. Well, who's in the ecosystem? Of course, in the edgy customers were the usual security suppliers in companies, etc., etc. The ecosystem, it also had hackers. Lots of insights came talking to hackers. How do you engage with security? Perhaps there'll be more insights there. But the most fascinating thing was going even further. Market intersections, time edge, knowledge intersections. Who else deals with security but is not a part of data security in a different world altogether? A doctor deals with body security. Talking to a doctor about with body security opened up new questions. And they found very fascinatingly that for them, security, the mental model of security was like a fort. You have to prevent something from coming in versus a body which is about self-immunizing. Well, that broke one of the mental models for them. There could be a different way of thinking here. And to talk to an entomologist, how ants deal with security. You notice each of these is joining new dots. But those dots don't join, you can't go around shopping for ideas. You have to do them deliberately. And this team on laundry, they joined new dots with the with a scientist who was involved in studying barnacles, if you like. Why did they meet him? Because removing is not physical dirt, there's also biological dirt. So let's meet somebody who deals with bacteria. So this guy said, after some time, you're talking about all bacteria is bad, all bacteria is bad, kill it, kill it. No, some bacteria is good. See, for example, barnacles. When they sit on the body of the animal inside the sea, it actually through taxidermal roots that help them take in nourishment. That led to the idea, well, what about doing the same thing to clothes? Take in health. Could something be done taxidermally? Now that opened a new question, right? Now suddenly new dots joined, and that's what opened up. What about adding health? There could be a different way of thinking. But where did this start? Talking to these people, engage. By the way, these conversations don't happen over a piece of paper on reports. These are live engagement dialogues. These are what we call insight dialogues. When you open up insight dialogues, it's fascinating how many new dots start to join. And all these will then become possible. These are 6 horizons. And taking a team actually to engage with these, it's fascinating how many new dots join, and very quickly. It takes a matter of weeks actually, not even months. But what happens accidentally over years can happen in a week or 2 weeks by deliberately setting up these joining dot conversations. Of course, deciding them first. Another company set out on this challenge, and they were talking to us about reducing water usage in all the personal care products. Personal care products, bathing, etc. is all water intensive, and water is becoming a challenge worldwide. How do we reduce it? Was their question. So they set out, how do we optimize it, limit it, reduce in the shampoo, etc. A lot of conversation happened like this, and what I was telling them is, if we start like this, how to reduce water, we'll end up with an optimizing answer. It's not an orbit shifting challenge. What would be an orbit shifting challenge? How about a range of personal care with 0 water? Now that is orbit shifting as a challenge, right? Which substitutes at 100%. Now we have no answer. We only have that question now. Then we set out on this journey, and who did we meet here in the edgy customers? Army officers who had been on glaciers, they have no access. People who have no access to water, what do? So new insights started from there. We even met a prisoner in a cell. They have very little access to water. What do? Somebody was keeping himself up well. So it was meeting exceptional edgy customers, nurses who handle bedridden patients. You notice each conversation was a new link altogether in the mind happening. And in terms of knowledge intersections, completely new people who have done away with any kind of dependencies. When these dots started to join, all these new possibilities opened up, and they have a range of at least 3 game changers in the pipeline now. And finally, big ideas don't get killed, they just get diluted. Even let's say we've come up with a big idea, what will happen to it now? Now you find that suddenly the rest of the organization is needed to execute it. Just few guys came up with it, everybody has to be involved in executing it. What appears like a Snow White in a boardroom becomes a pig by the time it reaches the market. Because everybody takes away a little bit from it. How many battles will you fight? How many silo battles? Because what's an exciting opportunity for you is a problem for the other guy. It's a headache, right? As if I don't have enough work. So, what happens at this stage? People engage with the new with their old comfort zones. He is a triangle manager. He's handled triangles 10 years of his life, and now you're giving him a circle. So what will he do? He'll fit it to the circle, to the triangle, and say what he can do and what he can't do. Yeah, if you want to do that, then you have to wait 5 years. Then you say, oh, forget it, man. At least let's compromise. Let's at least do 80% what you can do. First compromise. This is the way compromises happen. I'm sure you have lived through these compromises. In a lot of stage gate reviews, this is exactly what happens. We start fitting in the new to our existing way of working, and the compromise is one small touch at a time. It reduces over a period. And then when it doesn't work, we say the idea was bad. Actually, the way we executed was the problem. The idea was okay. It was taken out of shape by the time it finished. So really, top management must mandate, doesn't work. Finally, the biggest challenge for innovators is to enroll cross-functional people and to make it into a shared dream now. That is by far the lowest skill. and which is the toughest challenge usually. To excite and enroll peers into contributing to it with the same excitement that they feel now. And finally, the big idea is enough. Not really. A breakthrough product will need a breakthrough marketing innovation, perhaps. Sometimes the new idea goes into the old pipe in the last mile. It is sold in the old way. It is taken to market in the old way. And it gets reduced to nothing. So very often the last mile go to market is an even bigger challenge. And with some of the bigger, like M-Pesa, for example, it didn't start out like a B2C model even. It started out as B2B, if you like. They started out that microfinance companies will be our customers. For 2 years, they tried that out till they discovered the bigger opportunity was with B2C. But they had the patience to see it through. A year and a half of experimenting in a small way in one market till they figured out, by the time it finished, it was B2C. An even bigger opportunity had emerged. They didn't start with that insight, they finished with it. But can we have a way of doing that by design? Is there any reason why more ideas shouldn't succeed? Because we are assuming the original shape of it will be the final shape. It won't be. In the market, the dynamics will change it. And we have to be open to seeing it. Not just open, do it by design. In fact, it's in-market versioning, not product versioning, in-market versioning. Build it into an in-market success model. Not see it works. We say, let's see if it works. There is no if, it's only how to make it work. The first way we try may not work, the second may not work, the third will work. So these are the 6 differentiators that I've tried to pull out for you today. You know, of all our learnings, seeing it, I hope I've tried to share with you from starting from how you initiate it, to build it, to grow it, to take it to market. What does it take to make it happen? I think we've run out of time, but questions are left to you. Yes, please. Anything you'd like to add, ask, or share?
There's a question around, you talked about incremental change versus innovation. Innovation seems to, in that context, to be this big game changer. What if you have a product in market? How do you approach it so it's not an incremental change, it's an innovative change to something that may be working?
Actually, let me see if I've understood your question. At 2 levels. One is just to demystify that orbit shifting can happen across all the levels in an organization. Yes, the examples I've given you are larger than life kind of examples. For example, at a functional level, we've even worked with companies right on the shop floor. So where the guys at the shop floor have made leaps happen, which are created new reference points for the industry worldwide, but in their space. It's an orbit shifting innovation in his space. It need not be a game changer at an industry level, but it's a functional orbit shift, shall we say. It could be a functional orbit shift, it could be an organization orbit shift, or an industry orbit shift. The thing is, there is space for every one of us. In fact, even for talent, for HR. Product innovation is HR, right? Talent market. The product we have is perhaps in the industrial age. There's so much opportunity sitting there. So I would, the only thing is to shift focus to creating a quantum leap in my space. That would be an orbit shift. But to lift it so that we don't assume the process is a given. In incremental innovation, we assume the process is okay, you need to tweak it. But when we say an orbit shift, then the process in itself becomes a question. You have to rethink it. Please.
So one of the things you mentioned at the end was this example where if the idea is a circle and everybody knows about triangles,
Fit it in.
Fit the circle into a triangle. And the solution, if I understood correctly, the solution was to involve the stakeholders early on and sort of have them invested into this orbit shifting. And I agree with that, but I just find that sort of
tough,
unsatisfying because in large organizations there are many stakeholders.
Yeah.
Sort of impractical. What I mean?
I would think at various stages the challenge is to engage them in a co-creating manner rather than in a presenting and defend manner. The present and defend is the real issue. And also I'd urge you to think that when a stakeholder starts saying no, the challenge is how do you engage with that? What appears to be an unconditional no could be a conditional yes. The challenge is to get to that why and therefore use it as an opportunity rather than backtrack immediately. Because nobody really has a malintent, or at least 95% people don't have it. They get misunderstood more often than not. And we found that when we actually engage, you'll find what started out as a no very often is a conditional yes. But actually discovering that has strengthened the idea. And when the person finds his thinking has gotten understood and has contributed, he starts owning it. You notice as an illustration. So really share with them in a work in progress stage. As we say, sharing with them things which are littered all over in a work in progress stage is inclusive. A fully prepared deck is excluding actually. But preparing them for that is the question. Yes.
I think you've answered most of these already, but I was wondering, I deal with a lot of organizations that pride themselves on having a narrow scope by design. How do you find is the best way to challenge them to see that a wider scope would be better for the organization? Just because they are so proud of only doing one specific piece of the picture. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts of...
Basically, how do you provoke them to think beyond it, is it? Right. Yeah. You notice it would really begin with first some person reaching a stage of positive restlessness with the current stage. Now the question is, where is that restlessness sitting? Is to uncover that and leverage that to move them. Because very often, win the heart first and the mind will follow, is the principle that we found works usually. In fact, I'd urge you to think win the heart first and the mind will follow, rather than the other way around. Especially with them, wherever there is positive restlessness, is to uncover those and leverage those points to move them. Please.
Prime Minister Modi reached out to your organization to have you be a consultant for his new government. And if so, what advice would you give him?
Well, all I can say is there is so much opportunity. I would think at least our vision for emerging economies, especially India, is how do we leverage innovation to leapfrog growth and development of the nation and not merely catch up. Quite like what's happened in the mobile space. You know, it's fascinating there in a short span of a decade, the way it has leapfrogged. It's not merely caught up. It's like following the usual model would have taken decades. What has happened in a few years? Can the same thing happen in other spaces? And there is an example which I was about to share with you in literacy, where the same thing is happening, what I shared with you in Mongolia. That is the power of innovation, which can deal with the fundamental questions differently. But not to follow, but to question.
When we question...
However, India today, just to share with you, there is a National Innovation Council and every state has a State Innovation Council. And we are now of late getting these requests for state innovation roadmap proposals. So starting is there. It's at the start, but I'm hopeful, but then I'm a hopeless optimist.
My company is going through a lot of changes, and what I find is when we ask questions, people are very receptive in listening to the question, but when one starts answering one of those questions, that's when things go awry. So my question is, well, people are always welcoming when you start asking questions, but when you stop the question, put the stake on the floor and start answering or doing something, that's when devil gets loose. So what is your one key point that I can take so that when we move from the transition between questioning to answering, how do you control that part to...
Actually, you notice what happens is the moment you start answering, now stakes get involved, right? Intellectual discussion is easy. It's nice to have a very fascinating discussion as long as there is nothing to be done at the end of it. Because then if there is something to be done which I have to do, oh my God. So where does it begin? Why are we questioning? If we have an out-of-the-box challenge first, then questioning is normal. It is natural. You have to question then. The first question is to have that challenge sitting up there, which doing more of the same cannot do. Now, people are engaged in questioning. There is no, in fact, there's every reason to question now. But the starting point really is there. Somebody has to put stake on the ground there.
Everybody has, I mean, the whole company likes questions, likes to listen to questions, and as every company is, our goal is to make money. So we like to make money, we like to ask questions, but we don't know, but when you start thinking of doing certain things to make money, that's when things go bad. So my question is, what sort of questions or what sort of mindset should we take with us so that when the questions become answers, we can do the orbit shifting?
Actually, we've often found that money is a consequence. Impact is the question. That finally, how do we want game-changing impact we want to create on the market? Therefore, money will come. But what is that? For example, the M-Pesa idea, it didn't start by an idea. They actually looked at what are the Millennium Development Goals of the UN and how can we contribute to those? And financial access was one. You notice it started there, the big insight, the opportunity. I'd urge you to think, where are those big opportunities sitting out there where impact is needed? Because people sign on to an impact. They want to change lives. Then it stops being pressure, it becomes inspiration. Otherwise, it seems like pressure. Money, targets are pressurizing. But impact changing lives is inspiring. There's a reason to do something. After all, you need that extraordinary motivation. Yes?
A very specific Microsoft.
Please do.
We're at an inflection point. We have a new CEO who's making a very sort of mindful effort to change culture toward innovation. And how important is culture in all of this, and how do you do it in a company of 100 or now 125,000 employees?
I would think the start point would be uncovering that gravity and confronting it directly, but in a constructive way. The objective is not to pull down people, is to actually construct, but attack mindset gravity fundamentally and question that, but openly do it in the most constructive manner possible. In fact, this is a great, to present the current situation not as a threat but as the greatest opportunity of our lifetime. That when reinvention happens, very rarely are you a part of reinvention, doing the same thing every day we all do. But here's an opportunity to to reinvent it. If we do it with that intent, we suggest that mindset gravity has to be done with a view to creating the next orbit and not with reference to evaluating today. When it is done with that sense, it is positive, it unleashes, it doesn't pull it down. But it has to be done directly. Deflecting it around won't make a difference.
I like the French wine example that you gave. What other, maybe top of mind, examples you have of incumbent companies, long-standing, very successful, that made orbit shifts that were material to their growth and development and success?
Which actually made it? Maybe successful companies that made the orbit shift happen. One well-known example is really GE. The interesting thing what I've seen is they have pioneered. For example, the guy in India in the emerging markets, he referenced himself that we are not here. I don't want to be known as the best MNC in India, but the most admired Indian company. Therefore, making a difference to these people here is my real purpose. And that has led them to so many breakthroughs. Like the GE Mac 400, which is the portable ECG machine at 1/5 the price, which is now a breakthrough for the world. But they started out with questioning that and they had the space to do it. Even one company had the capacity to reinvent internally. So there are examples there. However, I must say they are lesser in comparison to others, which are far more standing. In the sense that is where gravity takes over, right? But there are. Vodafone and M-Pesa is one. Very successful. The same model everywhere. This is the first time they did anything. The first time. But I think the big learning there is to de-risk it, to do it in one market. The challenge is not to avoid risk, but to de-risk the out-of-the-box challenge and to try it out fully in one market and let it play out rather than putting it center stage and declaring it worldwide. Then everybody gets concerned tomorrow, oh shit, it's not working. The challenge is to let it play out. Give it space to play, to work, to grow in a side market. It doesn't have to be a global rollout on day one. Global rollout happens when you have built it into a success model, rather than be in a hurry to roll it out. That helps building that capacity, in-market versioning, literally. And not technical, but in-market. So the business model gets versioned literally.
I'll make that the last question. Thank you.
Last question? Okay, thank you very much, guys. All the very best.